Good morning, fifth grade. We'll do a quick lesson today over the impact today with the government's role in economy, talking about why we pay taxes. So this will be the end of our chapter 4. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we have the impact today. Why do people pay taxes? So taxing and spending. Taxes, spending, and representation played key roles in why the colonists revolted against the British in the American Revolution. So, how does government tax, spend, and impact the economy today? Every level of government, federal, state, and local, sets a budget or plan for how to collect and spend money. Governments collect most of their money from taxes. But they also collect fees for everything from parking on a public road to a museum ticket to a dog license. The federal government collects taxes such as individual income taxes, payroll taxes, and corporate income taxes. State and local governments collect income taxes, property taxes, sale taxes, and other taxes. So if you look at this little picture here, this is a parking meter. It says people can use coins, credit cards, and smartphones to pay for parking. So if we look here, this is an example of the amount of taxes collected in 2017. So this says 2017 U.S. federal government tax collected. So for every $100 collected in revenue, about $48 came from individual income taxes. About $35 of every 100 came from payroll taxes. About $9 came from corporate income taxes. And then about $8 came from other taxes and fees. And that was about $3.3 trillion in revenue that was collected. $3.3 trillion in 2017. The federal government spends money on many things, including national defense, Social Security, healthcare, and other services that impact the entire nation. Each year, the federal government spends in the trillions of dollars. So on the last page, we talked about how they collected $3.3 trillion in the year 2017. So let's see what types of things they spent money on. So now for every $100 in government money spent, about $24 was spent on healthcare. So for every $100, about $24 was spent on healthcare. $23 was spent on Social Security. About $15 was spent on defense. About 31 of every $100, $31 was spent on other programs, benefits, and services. And then about $7 was spent on interest and debt. So we raised in 2017 or brought in $3.3 trillion, but they spent over $4 trillion. All right. So that means that we had a deficit. That means we spent more than the money we brought in. So now the U.S. is in debt for the year 2017. All right. So state fund projects and services such as public schools, transportation, public safety, and courts. Your local government typically spends money on police and fire protection, parks and recreation, garbage removal, water and sewer services, and fixing roads. At every level of government, tax dollars help fuel government-provided services we use every day. Every time someone rides a bike down the road, watches a news story about a fire, visits a national park, or goes to a public school, a person sees his or her tax dollars at work. Okay, so let's go and continue on with debating choices. As with a personal budget, government budgets involve choices about how to collect and spend money. On the federal level, the President and Congress work together to prepare and approve the budget. On the state level, your governor and state legislator decide. Locally, your town's council and mayor make budget decisions. A budget surplus occurs when the government collects more than it spends. A budget deficit happens when a government spends more money than they collect. In this case, the government needs to borrow money. Just like individuals, governments need to pay back the money with interest, an extra charge to pay for borrowing. So let's go and take a look at this chart. Okay, so it says chart skills. The chart shows a sample of yearly surpluses or deficits from the past 30 years in dollars. Deficits are shown in orange type. An estimate is provided for 2020. What do you notice about deficits and surpluses over this time period? So if you look at 1990, we had a deficit of $221 billion. In 1995, it was a deficit of $164 billion. In the year 2000, we had a surplus, so we collected more money than we used, of $236 billion. In 2005, there was a deficit of $318 billion. In 2010, there was a deficit of $1.3 trillion or $1,300 billion. In 2015, there was a deficit of $438 billion. And the projected number that they had for 2020 is $987 billion. So citizens can impact government tax and spending choices by lobbying their representatives, protesting in public, and voting for candidates who reflect their economic ideas and values. Debates over spending and taxes can become challenging. Governments can even shut down and stop providing some services until representatives agree on a budget. All right, and then we have growing the economy. The nation's first Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, pictured here, believed in a strong government role in the economy. He fought for spending on roads, bridges, and power supplies to help trade and businesses. He proposed a tariff or tax on goods imported from other countries to pay for this and other economic investments. Hamilton's ideas helped transform the U.S. into a global economic leader. Today's governments at all levels invest in projects, people, and ideas to help the economy grow. In addition to transportation and the power grid, governments invest in medical research, education, and even exploring space to help the economy. And the federal government still applies tariffs at times on foreign goods to help companies that make the same goods in America. Foreign countries often retaliate with tariffs on American goods. So tariffs are like taxes. Governments also give tax incentives or breaks, so tax breaks, to businesses to help grow the economy. States and cities often compete with one another with lower business taxes to get corporations to build factories and headquarters in their area. Governments must weigh the cost of tax breaks. Offering tax breaks reduces tax revenue, but may lead to more jobs. So let's look at this. What is the impact today? So this is just a scenario that a town council has $100,000 remaining in its budget. It can afford to build a new playground or provide a tax break to a company to build a new grocery store in its town. Each of these would cost $75,000. So you could either choose to provide a tax break to a company which is going to build a new grocery store in its town, which would create more jobs and provide more revenue and more people paying taxes, or they could build a new playground. So these are the types of decisions that cities and towns and the governments have to make, and they have to weigh out the pros and the cons, the benefits of each thing to decide which one they would choose. So I want you to think about it. Which would you choose if you were on the council? Why? And then is there maybe another solution? Could you think of something else they could do instead?